From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Moscardo on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now, here is Jim and Rich.
And off and running on another episode of, what are we again? Oh, the Armchair Experts.
I'll tell you, I was almost drifting off to sleep listening to our...
I like our little jazz music. I want to start talking like Gene Honda
and besides,
Rick O'Dell and introduce something...
I started waking up at 4 o'clock this morning, so I'm in good shape for this. I'm a little punchy now, and that'll be good.
Oh, okay. That'll be an indication of how this show is going to be tonight.
You better believe it, baby.
All right, Jim Leon along with Rich Massaro, another edition of the Armchair Experts, like it or not. What should we get into today? Hey, first day of training camp. Want to talk football?
Sure, let's talk some football.
Oh, let's talk some Bears football. I am coming into this season with absolutely no expectations for this team. No high expectations, no low expectations. I'm just looking at the team and saying, okay, entertain me.
You know, I thought you were going to knock your microphone right off the stand there.
Well,
he's getting very animated, folks.
I don't know what it is today.
That he's not going. He's getting excited that he's not going to be excited.
I think I'm excited that I'm not going to be excited. I'm not going to get myself upset over football season this year. I'm just going to watch it and let it happen.
So you okay? That's what you have absolutely no expectations one way or the other.
I don't know what to expect from this team this year.
So since you have no expectations, what do you want to talk about?
Well, let's talk about how many games they're going to win this year.
Oh, now we got to get into expectations.
Actually, there's some interesting things this year. Have they made the improvements that they needed to make? Obviously, there's been some upgrades on the line. They have a tight end that might actually catch the ball this year in Martellus Bennett.
Okay.
Obviously, the improvements on the line with Jermon Bushrod is going to make a difference. But here's the interesting thing that I see today, and John provided us, Mr. DeVita.
What a guy.
What a guy. John, my guy.
John, you're the best.
Provided us with a very interesting, with the back page here of the Sun-Times, and I heard about this, a picture of Jay Cutler, and, of course, he's in the last year of his contract?
Yeah.
Yeah. Emory won't talk money during the season, so Cutler will have the year to prove his worth.
Well, you know, I read the article, and there's two things. I think first, for one of the few times that I could actually agree with the media, they're saying in the article,
let's alert the media.
Yeah, we're the media, I guess, but they're saying, and they've said in a few articles about Cutler as we lead up to the football season, this is his make or break year, and I think that's true. I don't think that just like Emory did not choose to go with Lovie Smith as coach and wanted to go with his own choice, I think the same thing is going to apply to Jay Cutler this year. I think that he's either going to show that he can do it or not, and if he doesn't show that he can do it to Trustman and Emory's satisfaction, I think he'll be gone after this year.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, though, that I find really interesting, and I don't remember whose article it was, but they alluded to some of the things you just talked about, Jim, where, you know, they added Alshon Jeffrey in the draft last year, Martellus Bennett as the tight end. They mentioned Bushrod coming in to play left tackle. And as if this was something unique to Jay Cutler's situation. But, I mean, the point they were making is, you know, it seems like Emory is just setting it up so, you know, to, and I may be using the wrong words, to benefit Cutler. But if you have a quarterback, I don't care if your quarterback is lousy or if he's the best quarterback in the world, I mean, that's a key guy in your team. Of course you're going to set it up the best way you can for him. So why, I don't understand what the press is saying about this.
I don't know. It sounds like they're trying to create a controversy before there's anything to even look at. Is this going to be a decent team this year? It's kind of an interesting thing. I pulled out over the weekend. I looked at everybody's training camp preview and looking at the in the Tribune and the 2013 odds on everybody. Mm-hmm. The Bears are 28-1 to win the Super Bowl.
28-1. Is that the low? What other? In comparison, who's in that ballpark with them?
Redskins are 33-1. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are are 50 to 1. The
Okay.
Rams, let's see, other teams in the division. Let's just look at the division. Packers are 12 to 1. The Vikings are 40 to 1.
Okay.
The Bears are 28 to 1. Lions are 40 to 1.
Okay, so they're saying the Bears are the second best team in their division, which is, I think you could reasonably argue that. Just thinking about it real quick, I think the Vikings are probably, I don't know the Vikings per se, but they're probably figure they're still pretty iffy at the quarterback position. And Detroit, I think, is strong at the QB position, but I think the rest of their offense is suspect. Their defense is usually strong, especially their front. But going back to what you're asking about the Bears, just doing a real quick thing in my mind here. I think obviously the offensive line, Emery's addressed that. It's going to be better than it was, and I think with Trestman, with his track record in terms of prevention of sacks, especially as coach of the Alouettes, they really reduced their number of sacks from the time he came, or from the year before he came to the year he was there, if that makes any sense. You've got, I think you have decent wide receivers. You've upgraded your tight end position. Cutler has definitely got ability. The other thing I was going to mention about the article about Cutler is they said most talented quarterback the Bears have ever had. I'd like to, as we go on, I'd like to maybe take a little issue with that. But you got Forte in the backfield, who's a known quantity. I think your backfield is okay.
You got Michael Bush to spell him when he needs
good
to.
Good running back, very
right.
good. And defensively, I would say this. I would say the line is a question mark only because Julius Peppers is getting a little older, and I'm not so sure. I think we've talked about this in other shows that Henry Melton, his good production last year, maybe because of the attention paid to Peppers. But I think the defensive line is okay, not overwhelming. I think the linebacking core, they've really upgraded that. I think that should be very strong. Defensive backs, I think, are iffy, especially the corners. Tillman is getting old, and Jennings had a great year last year, but who knows if he can continue that.
Both of them had amazing years last year. I mean, you had Tillman with 10 forced fumbles, and Jennings picked off 9 passes. Those numbers are outlandish. And can they do that again? I mean, let's just look at it. This is a defense that scored 9 touchdowns last year.
Mm-hmm.
And made up for a lot of faults on that offensive.
It did, but
covered a lot of
here's
faults.
What I would say to that, though, Jim. Honestly, I think they were really good against teams that they were, let's say, equal to or better, obviously better than, but not that great against teams that presented a challenge. Teams like the Packers and whatever other contenders they played last year. I don't think they were as good.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think that especially the upgrades at linebacker will maybe help that to a degree, but I think the next areas that they're going to have to address as a team will probably be the defensive corners and maybe as many defensive linemen as they've stockpiled over the years. I can't believe I'm saying that the defensive line, not saying it's a weakness, but I think it's average.
I think the Bears' defense this year will probably slide a little bit, but I still think that's one of the top 10 defenses in the league.
It could be. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say this. Lovie Smith was always accused of being strictly a defensive guy and not caring about the offense. And I wouldn't say that he didn't care about the offense, but I think that was a weakness for him.
Mm-hmm.
What I like to see, and I don't know that it's coming from Trestman, it's probably coming from Emery, but there was equal emphasis put on strengthening areas that needed to be strengthened on both sides of the ball this offseason. So I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. I think they've addressed some of the weaknesses, but let's face it. You've got a defensive line that's aging.
Mm-hmm.
You've got some linebackers that are getting up there, and that's going to be something that's certainly going to have to be addressed. Maybe not this year, but next year. As we start to talk about the 2014 draft.
You know what, though, Jim?
We're getting way ahead of ourselves.
I think DJ Williams, though, is I hate to say this because I'm a big Brian Urlacher fan, and Brian Urlacher is an icon, but he's going to be an upgrade over Urlacher.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Roach was a good linebacker, but
I
obviously
really
they
thought
lost
so,
him.
too. Yeah.
But this James Anderson is not a big name. He's not a guy who jumps out at you, but he's been one of the leading tacklers for the Carolina Panthers over the course of his career, and very good numbers there. And you have two really good, I think, guys who are going to be really good players in Green and Bostic that they've drafted.
That's exactly what I wanted to mention, because you've got a couple of good prospects here. It was Green really fits the mold. When he was at Rutgers, he played 2 years at free safety, and then Greg Schiano, who's now the head coach at Tampa Bay, asked him to move the linebacker. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a very similar situation to what Urlacher was, because Urlacher was a safety in college and moved the linebacker. So I think he has some possibilities. He's got a nose for the ball. He's a perfect fit for the defense that the Bears play.
Yeah, I'll put it this way. From what I've seen and heard about these two guys, I think they would be a great fit for almost any defense, because I think they're the real deal. I think they're both going to be really good football players, just based on a little bit what I've seen and what I've heard. It's just you know what? I go on feelings, I go on impressions, I go on what I see a little bit on what a little bit of film I have seen, and I think both of those guys are going to do well for us. Jim, could I throw this in, though? I wanted to get back to Cutler because of the comment that was made in the paper about, he was the, what did I just say? He was the most talented, or the best.
He's the
most talented guy we've ever had.
Most talented. I think it's been mentioned. The most talented quarterback the Bears have ever had.
Yeah, that was the word.
Or at least since you and I have been alive.
Well, no, I mean this guy, whoever wrote the article, that was the blanket statement. But I would like to say this: until Jay Cutler, here's the thing I was thinking as I'm reading this. Back when we were young guys in the '60s, I remember there was talk at one time. Roman Gabriel came up with the Rams, and they were this guy was going to be the prototype for the quarterback of the future. 6'4", 220 pounds, a great arm. And, I mean, Roman Gabriel was a very good quarterback, but he never won a championship. Sonny Jurgensen, who probably was the best pure passer from at least that era, and maybe one of the best pure passers ever, had excellent numbers, was an excellent player, never won a championship.
True.
So to me, what distinguishes that position is, did you win a championship? And so right now, if I'm going to rate Jay Cutler, just real quickly, I'm going to say he's number 4, because Sid Luckman won numerous championships. Billy Wade won a championship, and people. I was thinking about this last night, Jim. Bill Wade, everybody would say, well, in today's parlance, they would say, oh, you just managed the game. The defense did it. But, when you think about that 63 team, that wasn't even a running team. They didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher. The two big guys on that team were Johnny Morris and Mike Ditka.
Right.
So Billy Wade was obviously passing, and that was their offense. So, and he was also a guy with a big arm, as was his backup, Rudy Bukic. And I won't go chapter and verse about Rudy the Rifle. But, I mean, Billy Wade, they won a NFL championship with him as quarterback, and, of course, Jim McMahon.
They won an NFL championship, and you realize, if you remember, the average score of a Bear game that year was 14-10.
It's something. I think that was the score of the championship game as well.
It was also the score of the championship game, but the average score of a Bear game was something like 14-10.
But my point, going back to my point, I would not rate Jay. I don't see how you can rate Jay Cutler as the best quarterback the Bears have had when you have three guys that I could think of, and there's probably somebody else in the long ago past that was under center or doing whatever a quarterback did at that time back in the 30s before Luckman. But those three guys won championships, so I don't see how you can rate Cutler above them. He's a guy with a lot of talent.
I think that's when you look at it, you have to look at the talent, and we keep talking about the potential that Jay Cutler has, and has he ever achieved it, though?
Well, you know what potential is, Jim.
Tell me, Richard.
I mean, potential is like, how they'll say there's certain code words. A lot of times they, I hope Kevin doesn't take me off the air, but usually black people say, well, that's a code word for, they mean this. I can't think of an example. But potential is a code word in athletics parlance for saying this guy hasn't done anything yet.
Yeah.
That's what potential means.
I remember that when Floyd Bannister was signed for the White Sox, with the White Sox. I said he's got great potential.
Yeah.
He's got a record under 500.
Yeah, well, that's what it means. You haven't done a darn thing yet.
That's right. He. So I guess this is going to be the big year for Cutler. To see if this is the direction that this team is going to go for the next few years. There's also a few other battles we want to talk about. You did mention we need to start watching the corners. But we got a little something going on. You've got some people in at the safeties. I mean, you've got Chris Conte and Major Wright, but there's still some other people behind him: Craig Stelz, Brandon Harden, Anthony Walters, Tom Zbikowski, the Notre Damer.
You named two guys there that I like a lot. Craig Stelz, I'm glad to see he's still with the team because he's in my opinion, a real team player. I think he does a really good job on special teams, and when he gets a chance to actually play downs in the game, I think he does a good job as well. He's a guy who reminds me a little bit of maybe not Gary Fensick, but Doug Plank. He's a hitter. He's a missile. He comes in and he'll blast you. The guy who interests me is Tom Zbikowski. They're saying that he may not have much of a shot to make the team. I think he's a really solid guy, a good athlete. He was a quarterback, all-state quarterback in high school, I think, out of Buffalo Grove. And he's had a few professional boxing matches. So a good athlete. I don't think you can discount, and I think he's a competitive guy. I don't think you can discount Zbikowski out of the mix.
No, and I don't think you can. Now, I think the wild card in here has to be Brandon Harden. He's still the one to watch. Now, he was a third-round pick in 2012, but he missed last season because of a neck injury, which came after missing his senior year at Oregon State because of a shoulder injury. So I guess, you look at this guy, 6'3", 217, he's bigger than the others. And if he can stay healthy, there might be the slot on the roster. I'd love to see Zbikowski make this team because
he's a local guy.
He's a local guy.
Want to see him make the team? Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Now, is Kyle Long going to make an impact this year?
I think Kyle Long is going to be one heck of a football player. They keep saying, they always refer to the fact that he came to football late. To me, as a coach, if you want to put a positive spin on that, you could say, well, he may have less habits that you don't want him to have to break. And, he's got the size. He's obviously athletic enough, and I think he'll do. Plus, when I look at his father and his brother, if his motor is anywhere close to either of those two, I think he's one heck of a good pickup.
I think he is, too. I think he'll be, too. Wide receiver and tight end. They've got a lot of receivers and tight ends on this training camp roster. And I think, probably after we get past Brandon Marshall, Alshon Jeffrey, and Earl Bennett, because of Jeffrey and Bennett having history of injury problems, there's a need for some additional help in here. You've got Devin Aromashodu back, and I'm sure all the Bears meatball fans are happy about that. But you got Terrence Tolliver, you got a veteran in Eric Weems. So there needs to be. I guess it'll be interesting to see what kind of play these guys get during the exhibition games, and see if one of them is going to hang on. One or two of them are going to hang on.
Jim, I thought they had a couple other long, tall guys that had looked pretty good in former preseasons, and maybe.
I know you got a rookie, Marquise Wilson, and Terrence Tolliver, who's 6'5".
Okay, I have somebody. I was in the airport one day and saw some of the draft picks come by, and a buddy of mine who works at the airport was telling me, and just in passing, he says, we got the 7th round draft pick Wilson, who's not going to make the team, but I'm not so sure that might not be a real.
Marcus Wilson.
Yeah, I think that might end up to be a real good grab for them, and you might see some good production out of Marcus Wilson.
Yeah. You got Michael Ford, who was an undrafted free agent running back, and he made some impact at minicamp this year.
As a running back?
Yeah.
Okay. Where's he out of, Jim?
Michael Ford, he is out of LSU.
Okay. Well, they usually
have
some
right. But a couple of people need to pay attention, as one comment has made here, that a couple of people need to pay attention to his talent. Ford's talent, Armando Allen and Devin Hester, because Allen made some plays when he was given the chance, but Ford could outshine him, and Hester's certainly just been relegated to his role as a kick returner.
Well, I don't want to bring up things in the past, but because we're just starting out on the show, I'm forced to in this case. I wanted the worst. Sometimes you get into a situation where a guy performs so well at a task like Devin Hester did as a return man, that you're in a position where you're maybe going to lose the guy. And the Bears did something that I think was really, really, really stupid, and paid him and then projected him into the wide receiver position. And when he was actually, if he did anything position-wise at, where's he from, Florida or Miami? Florida State? He's from Florida somewhere.
Miami.
Yeah. Well, he actually, I think, was a DB there.
He was a defensive back there, and they tried to make him a defensive back when he came here.
Right.
But the rap has always been on Hester is he's not terribly smart.
Well, the point I was going to get to is if you look at your great return guys over the years, and I could think back to Nolan the Flea Smith with Kansas City, and Billy White Shoes Johnson, who played with the Oilers, and whatever guy you want to name. That is the type of job, returning kickoffs and punts. It's a short-term thing. Eventually, the guy loses that step or whatever he's got. I would be really interested. There's probably not too many guys who've done that successfully beyond 3 years. So the Bears, I think, got into one of these binds where there was so much media pressure that they felt they had to do something to keep this guy, when the smartest thing they could have done is just said, okay, you know what, this is the position he plays. Maybe I think we've seen the best that he can do, and get rid of him. And he might go someplace and have a couple more good years, but no more than that. And they should have just cut the ties, not paid the money, and just cut ties with Devin Hester. Now, having said that, I think this current administration, because they have one more year left, I think, on the contract with him, they're going to keep him, and he's going to be a kick returner, and that's it, and then he'll be done.
And he'll be done, and he can move on to whatever he needs to move on to.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Over-under on Bears victories this year. This particular line, I don't know where it came out of. Over-under on the victories, 8.5.
Over, under, and explain that to me because I'm not sure what we're talking about.
Okay, basically they're saying that, do you say, are you saying 8.5? Are they going to win more than it? Are they basically going to win more than 8 or less than 8?
I'm going to say that they're going to win less than 8. I haven't looked at their schedule lately, but when it first came out, I looked. I think they have a pretty tough schedule.
They do.
And so I think what you'll do is you'll see a team that wins less games, but I think Bears fans are going to walk away from the season a little happier because I think they will see some improvements in different areas that we haven't seen improvements in a long time. And I think you'll see your offensive line be much better, much improved. I think you will see at least the attempt to, instead of the offense being Cutler to Marshall, the attempt will be made to be to have a more diversified offense. I think you'll see some really nice aggressive play out of the linebackers. And then I think the other, as we mentioned before, I think other parts of the team are going to be a little iffy. But I think people will be pleasantly surprised with those 3 things that I mentioned.
Okay, all right. I'm kind of like you. I think it really is going to be. If I was to be going to the window on this, I'd be taking the under.
Okay. Yeah.
I would bet the under on this. It's interesting too. This is setting them at 7-2 to win the division, 16-1 to win the NFC, and as I said, 28-1 to win the Super Bowl. The cream of the crop seems to be in the NFC this year. 49ers are 6-1 to win the Super Bowl. Seattle's 8-1.
Seattle, that's an interesting one.
Yeah,
I would say this: the Seattle gives the 49ers fits. Usually they usually split, no matter how good or bad Seattle is. And I would say this: I think the 49ers, not that they're not a good team, they're a good, very good team, but they've been to the Super Bowl now here 2 years in a row, and have lost, right, both times. Mm-hmm. Am I correct there? Or
no,
did they win once. Or they didn't. No, they lost the NFC Championship.
They lost the NFC Championship.
And they lost the Super Bowl.
They lost the
game.
Super Bowl
that's
this year.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers didn't even make it back.
The ones that I'm surprised that they're getting so much love here right now is Seattle, because everybody's had a year now to look at film and figure out what to do with Russell Wilson.
Yeah,
and I think that's going to be the key.
I'll tell you what, though, Jim. Pete, I'm not going to say Pete Carroll's a great coach at the pro level, but he's a very interesting coach. And what amazes me about Seattle is their ability, at least what I've seen, and maybe people could call me out and say I'm nuts, but they can change on the fly. Mm-hmm. If it's not working for them, they'll change right in the middle of the season and do something else, and they'll keep changing until they find something that works.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that they're, in my mind at this point, I wouldn't call them a Super Bowl favorite. But at the same time, I wouldn't say that I'm my pencil's not that sharp to be an expert on something like that.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure who I'd be looking at right now. Certainly coming out of the NFC, maybe at this point, I'd still be looking at the 49ers. I never thought Jim Harbaugh's act would play well as a pro coach, but by golly, he does. It works.
Yeah, I mean, he knows.
I thought he was a goof, really.
Well, let's put it this way, though. You look at, his father was a coach,
right?
And both he and his brother are coaches. These are guys who not only can they probably do all the things that our experts who like to dabble in statistics, not only would they be good at that, but they have the gut feeling for the game as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that stands them in good stead.
That's a key. That's very important. Looking at the AFC right now, it looks like everybody's they got Denver 6-1 to win the Super Bowl.
I like Denver. I mean, anytime you have
I do too.
Anytime you have I was going to say Archie Manning, Peyton Manning, I think you have a chance. I'd say this, Jim. You have great quarterbacks in the NFL: Archie, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and I think there's other guys who, maybe a couple other guys I could mention that are not coming to mind. But I would say this: even among the greats, I mean, even among guys like Johnny Unitas or Joe Montana, Bart Starr, whoever you like in the pantheon of quarterbacks, Peyton Manning has something that I have not seen too much in any quarterback. As important as that position is, he is a guy, as a quarterback, and this is tough to do, that can make a team that is not that good way, way better. When you look at Denver,
I was just going to say he did it. He did it last year.
Yeah, I mean, you name one big-time wide receiver they have, or you name, but he will make the other guys better.
Well, you've got Wes Welker there now.
Well, yeah, Wes Welker. I mean, he's a good. But
he's getting a little bit old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker. There's targets there.
Yeah, I think Denver will do real well. But I mean, at this point in time, I would be let the guys who or the odds makers say who they think. I have to wait until about 2 weeks before the end of the regular season before I'd even start to venture any guess. And then I'd probably be wrong then.
Okay. Well, next show we're going to have to talk about it a little more and see what
Okay.
we can figure out. You want to talk baseball?
Yeah, whatever you want to talk about.
Whatever I want to talk about. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm following your lead, big guy.
Okay. All right.
You know that.
Next time you plan it, I'll follow yours.
Okay. I'll plan it.
Okay.
Which planet do you want to talk about? Pluto, Krypton?
Pluto, any of those.
Okay.
So we finally had the big surprise. Nobody expected to see Matt Garza traded this week. Gee, what a surprise.
You know what, Jim? I've been doing a lot of thinking because I knew you were going to bring
say
this up.
something else. Right?
Yeah. And
and Kevin's sitting over there in the other room.
Oh, jeez. Kevin would have beeped this right off the air. It would have been like Chuck Barris on the Gong Show. And I have to tell you, I think the thing that sort of sticks in my craw here, but let me say this right up front. I've been really on the fence about what Epstein and company are doing, but I have to say, I think we're doing a lot of the right things. I think the thing that bothers me, and my gut reaction when I see Matt Garza, who is really pitching well, and pitched well last night in his first start for Texas, and thinking back to last year when we lost Ryan Dempster and Paul Mahalem, I'm thinking to myself, these guys, though, here's what gets me. I think they've made some really great acquisitions of players who are, I'm not saying they're the top tier players, but when I see guys like David DeJesus, who I never saw really that much, Nate Shearholtz, who I always thought was a backup, and maybe is still a backup, but having a really nice year and is a good guy to have on your team, a guy like Louis Valbuena, who's been very serviceable for us at several positions,
right.
Mostly third. And Deanna Navarro, who's, boy, I tell you, when he was
wasn't that a great pickup?
It was a really nice pickup.
Yeah. And
what I'm thinking to myself is, you know what, if we had Ryan Dempster, Paul Mahalem, Matt Garza, who's Travis Wood, Edwin Jackson, or, you know, and then throw Scott Feldman and Jeff Samardzija in there somewhere, whatever way you want to use them, and then Kevin Gregg, you'd have a strong, you know what, you would have a real chance, even with the guys we have, position-wise, to have a really good season, because I am really impressed with not to say they're great players, DeJesus, Shearholtz, the guys we named, I'm not going to go over all of them again. I'm not saying they're all-stars or that they're guys that you could never let go of, but they really impressed me with their professionalism.
You could have a great season with a team like that, but it still doesn't address the fundamental problem that this Cub team has had, and absolutely barren minor league.
Right, and that's why they're doing what they're doing.
And that's why they have to do what they're doing.
But what I'm saying is seeing their track record
painful.
on people, but I mean seeing the people they've brought in to fill the gaps until we get to that point is, to me, I'm becoming more and more impressed. I was listening to the game last night. By the way, I heard the finals. Did the Cubs win that game last night? Because I know I turned it off when Shearholtz hit the 3-1 homer to give us a 6-zip lead.
Yeah, they came back and tied it up. And they won it. They won it in extra innings. Matter of fact, I think Shearholtz drove in the winning run. He drove in 5 runs last night.
Here's the thing I wanted to say to you.
Shearholtz.
What year was it? Was the Black Sox scandal?
1919
was it?
1919.
Okay, and those players all got banned for life from baseball for throwing baseball games. How come then it is, Jim, that when owners or the people who make those decisions decide that they're going to dismantle a ball club, which means that, in my way of thinking, I'll put it this way, I'm being perverse, okay, so maybe it's, but I'm going to throw this out this way, to be perverse, is that, well,
I've said that about you for years.
You're intending to lose games, right? You're deliberately losing games for a reason, because probably you want a better draft position or whatever, and so why is it now? Okay, I'm not saying the owners should be banned, because I think it's a business, obviously, and there's financial reasons for some of these things that are going on too. But why doesn't the paying customer get a break at the ticket window when you're making this team from, okay, this was not a great team anyway to begin with, but there's numerous examples. The Cubs aren't the only ones who've ever done this. in the history of baseball.
You got Miami doing it right now.
Miami's doing it. Connie Mack did it back in the 20s. Harry Frazee did it with the Boston Red Sox.
Connie Mack did it a couple of times.
So it's not anything new. But so how come if I decided to go to a Cubs game, I'm paying full ticket price? When you're giving away, I'm not giving away. When you're trading all of your best players,
when you got a minor league contract, when you got a
minor league product out there.
Yeah.
So how come the owners don't pay the piper on that? I mean, I guess it's whoever is calling the tune pays the piper.
You're getting these socialist leans, and I'm concerned about.
I'm not really getting socialist. All I'm saying is that what's fair is fair. It has nothing to do with socialism.
I know, but let's talk about what happened this week. I
don't know what did happen.
We sent Matt Garza. The Cubs sent Matt Garza to Texas, who's in dire need of help in their pitching staff.
Okay.
We get a AAA third baseman, Mike Holt, a starter from their staff right now, Justin Grimm, a single-A right-handed pitcher, C.J. Edwards, plus a player to be named later, maybe two.
Mm-hmm.
I think, first of all, just getting that at this time, that's a good haul.
Yeah, actually, Jim, you got something for nothing
because
Garza is the Cubs are not going to sign him regardless. I mean, if they were really had intention of signing him, he was open to being extended or whatever when they had him.
Right.
So he wasn't going to be signed regardless. So you really gave away somebody who's not going to be here anyway, and you got. Now, whether they're just warm bodies or whether one or two of those guys or one of those guys, or even if none of them pan out, at least you got something for them.
Yeah. The view of a lot of people, even though his numbers are off this year, is Mike Holt.
Yeah.
He's the key, and a lot of people think he's going to be the third baseman by the end of the year.
I'm sure you'll see him by the end of the year.
You'll see him by the end of the year. I mean, he had a great year in 12 in the Texas League with 28 home runs, and the numbers were 288, 398, and 579. So 398 on base percentage.
I have to ask you this though, Jim. What is Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer think they're the James Harriets of the sporting world or something? I mean,
bring us your tired, you're sick.
The guy, the guy who wrote the book, the Animal Doctor, the vet, James Harriet. I mean, because we got Vizcaíno, who can't even pitch because his arm is shot. We got Holt, who's suffering from a concussion. We got Scott Baker, who can't throw the ball over 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
What is that? Or maybe Epstein, maybe he's got a Moses complex or something. Moses did miracles when God gave him the rod, right?
That could be.
So maybe Theo thinks, hey, I'm Jewish, I can do miracles.
Somebody see what
I'm Moses Epstein.
Oh, he's out of control. But I think this is going to be a key. Another key is this kid Edwards, who's having a great year in A-ball. Granted, A-ball. Okay, but this is a guy who hasn't given up a home run in his 18 starts this year, which is pretty impressive no matter what level you're at.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what though?
8-2 record, 1.83 ERA.
Steve Dalkowski never gave up many home runs. That's because he never threw the ball over the plate.
He never got the ball over the plate.
He used to, yeah. Well,
okay, but obviously, obviously Edwards is getting the ball over the plate because he struck out 122 hitters in 93 innings.
You know, when you trade a major leaguer and you get an A-ball player, Jim, I mean, you could, I know that you gamble a little bit. Did you ever play craps?
Yeah.
Well, okay. I mean, it's a roll of the dice. That's all I can tell you. Admit it. You played. Come on.
That's all it ever is. Obviously, a roll of the dice is this guy Grimm, who's been lit up pretty much all season. He's a 500 pitcher, but he's got a 6.37 ERA.
You told me before. How old is this guy?
Grimm? I don't remember.
Hey,
I don't remember.
You know what? I got to run this by you.
I think he might be about 24.
Last night I'm listening to the game, and Keith Moreland and Pat Hughes are talking, and they're talking about Junior Lake, who's really doing one heck of a job since he's gotten up there with the Cubs. And Hughes said something, and I don't remember who the name was he was referring to, but he says, this particular individual had said there are certain guys who will do better at the major league level than the AAA level. And Moreland sort of, not that he poo-pooed it, he says, yeah, you're up here with the 700 best players in the world. And he sort of laughed it off. But I'm thinking, in the past, it never refers to a pitcher, but it's always a position player. And I've heard the same thing said about other players in the past where the exact same thing was said. And the reasoning behind it is this. When you're in AAA or you're in the minors, the pitchers obviously don't have as good a control. So you're up there at the plate, and you may go after pitches, depending on the situation, that aren't as good. And so you suffer average-wise. When you're in the majors, where you're playing against people who have control, you know the ball's going to be around the plate. And I'm not saying everybody. These are these individuals that have been talked about over the years like this, and I'm trying to think of a good example, because as soon as Moreland said it, or Hughes and Moreland talked about it last night, I said, I've heard this before on occasion. But because the ball's around the plate, you are a good hitter, and you have more opportunities to hit the ball, and you show better in the majors than you did in AAA. I know that it's happened. I mean, you look at some great players like a Johnny Bench. I think Carlton Fisk was another I could think of. If you look at their minor league stats, they were really not great, and they got to the majors and they did one heck of a job. So I was surprised that Moreland sort of poo-pooed that, because I think I'm not saying it happens all the time, but on occasion I think that is a reality of what happens.
I think it is too. Now I know under this regime they like them to have their at bats at every level before they're ready. That's why I'm kind of surprised. Really, Junior Lake came up from AA. And I saw something today. He has had more hits in his first 6 games as a Cub since any Cub since 1916.
Yeah, I'm trying to think
hits,
of the trying to think
like
of
that.
the name that I. No, actually, it was since. That might be a different story.
Yeah.
Before yesterday, it was 1943. Andy Pafko was the guy that he had more hits than.
Okay.
But that was the number of hits that he had at
Okay.
the time that was written, which was a
Okay.
day or two ago.
Okay.
So now it's a different player, and it's a different time slot that you're talking about,
Right.
with the 16 hits that
Right.
he's got.
Right.
You know what was really a weird thing, and I think if I'm Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer, I got to be shaking my head about what the heck did I do paying Starlin Castro all this money. In the paper a few days ago, Dale Swaim made a comment saying that Junior Lake, in the game that he had played that night, had gotten a couple of bunt singles. And Swaim made a comment to the effect that even Starlin Castro, who I've never seen bunt before, this was Swaim saying this, not me, tried to bunt for a hit. And I'm thinking, okay, you got a guy fresh up from the minors who is doing something that and really it's beneficial, because if you got any kind of speed at all, and Castro's got some speed, he's not a slow guy, and you're not hitting. I mean, even a guy like Mickey Mantle, occasionally, if he wasn't hitting, I'm not saying every big slugger did it, but Mickey Mantle would drop a bunt. And there's a lot of guys who would drop a bunt. Pete Rose, if he was stuck, would drop a bunt. So you're telling me that the guy you decided to pay millions of dollars to is watching a rookie, getting his cues on what he can do, maybe to get a few more hits and get on base a few times. And this guy's fresh up from the minor leagues, and you just paid this other guy how many millions of dollars, and he doesn't have the head to think about this himself.
Maybe it's starting to think in. To
think in?
To
Okay,
stick.
Jim. Okay.
Certainly is.
Okay, Mr.
Sink
Mitchell.
in.
Okay. We got.
Who do you think? Okay,
Who do you think you are?
you brought something up when you bring up Castro's name. You look at this Cub team and think right now they're playing for 2015.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And we're only in 2013. We got to go through another year of this.
Is Castro is Castro going to be in the lineup?
I hope not. I don't like him. I would say that right out. I would keep. You know what?
And if he is, what's his position?
Well, he's not a shortstop. I'd say that. And I wouldn't. And he doesn't have the power to play third base. To me, if I had the biggest criticism I could make of this administration here that's running the Cubs is that signing right there. I don't like the Rizzo signing that much either, but I would say this, at least Rizzo, you go around, Soriano, people complain about Soriano all the time. I'll tell you what, Soriano is a guy that works hard all the time. He's 37 years old. He's worked like crazy on his fielding to improve that, and he's a veteran making millions of dollars, and he's a great guy in the clubhouse. You got DeJesus, Schierholtz, professionals, Valbuena, Barney, Rizzo is attempting to, I'm talking about up here in the head, all professionals. I think Castillo, what I've seen, would fit into that mold. Navarro, definitely.
Right.
I think the guys who are out there pitching for him, I think Castro is your one sour note in the whole orchestra there. I would like to see him get rid of him. But now, let me tell you, they're not going to get rid of him because they paid him too much.
Not with that number.
No.
I think in 2015, your infield is going to be Mike Holtz at third.
Mm-hmm.
Probably Baez at shortstop.
Mm-hmm.
Castro at second. Or Arizmendi Alcantara. That's another one who's down in A-ball and has been impressing everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And Rizzo at first. Your outfield, you're going to have Soler. He's at Kane County. Almora in center. And now they're saying, they're going to try to, fast track and put Chris Bryant and turn him into an outfielder. Wellington Castillo is going to be your catcher.
Well, you know what, Jim? I'm going to interrupt you and disagree. That's not going to happen.
Wellington?
No, not Wellington Castillo. First off, not all of those guys are going to progress and make it to the majors. That's number one.
That's what I'm saying, 15.
No, but I mean, and even in 15, they're not every guy that you have spotted as a major leaguer is going to progress and become a major leaguer. Somebody's going to get injured. Somebody's not going to live up to expectations. Somebody who's when you say the second baseman, Darwin Barney is going to get a bug up his rear end and say, "No, you're not taking my job for me."
Okay, good.
There's going to be guys who are
That's what
compete.
I want to see.
And this is the thing. This is the game plan, but the game plan never works out the way. I don't care who you take, what team. You could take the greatest organization, you could whatever. It's not going to work that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not. So that's not going to happen. But
great way to speculate right now.
It's nice to speculate.
Do you think Jeff Samardzija going to prove himself as a number one starter?
I think he's a major league starter. I don't like him as a number one starter.
I don't
myself.
either.
And
I don't think he's.
I think he's. Honestly, that's why I would like to see them. At least would have kept one of those pitchers that they've gotten rid of, because I think you need. Here's the thing. The aggravating thing is, say that everything worked out the way you said, and all those guys were major leaguers that you mentioned, and they all did well. Now they don't have the pitching. I mean, who's the pitchers? There's no pitchers.
There is no pitching that's developed sufficiently down there yet. You're who I can see is two parts of this the rotation in 2015 are Travis Wood and Jeff Samardzija.
Yeah, that's fine. They're effective pitch, and you got Jackson because he's signed long term.
Mm-hmm.
So you got three, but you don't really have a guy who stands out as the I think they all can be effective starters, but you don't have a real horse for the rotation.
No, not yet.
No,
not yet.
Well, that's a deep subject.
That's right. We don't even want to talk about the White Sox.
Nah, I don't like that.
Although Peavy pitched well today, and I'm sure he'll look good in a Cardinals uniform.
I'll tell you that. That wouldn't surprise me. The Peavy would be a great pickup for the Cardinals. He's got the right attitude to play with them, and God bless him because he's a competitor. A guy I never even thought was gonna. I thought when the Sox got him, this is the kiss of death. He's gonna break down, have arm problems, not pitch, and he proved everybody wrong.
Well, he did break down, but he came back from it.
He did. He's a wonderful player, and if you're a Sox fan, appreciate him while you still have him, because he's a great guy to have on your team.
Okay. What should we go on to now? Should we talk about a few of those other little topics we've been kicking around over coffee, like the Mount Rushmore of Chicago sports?
Mount Rushmore. I have to mention there's a website that Jim, if you haven't checked it out already, you should check it out. It's called Bleacher Report.
I do check it out periodically.
And I haven't gone to the Chicago Bears or the Chicago. What I was disappointed about with that website was I just let a name flash into my head. I went to the Philadelphia Eagles, and they gave the top 50 Philadelphia Eagles of all time. And, of course,
Tommy McDonald, Chuck Bednarik.
What was really interesting is there was a lot of more modern guys in the top 50. But when they got down to the top 10, it was your Tommy McDonald's was 10, and Al Wistert, who was a 40s era tackle or offensive lineman, was in there. Pete Retzlaff, who was around when we were kids, was like in the top 10.
Right.
And I was really gratified to see the final three, which I would totally agree with if I was a Philly fan, was Reggie White 3, Steve Van Buren 2, Chuck Bednarik 1. But I was disappointed. I went back to the website today to look at some things. I looked at Atlanta Braves baseball. I just started from A. And they gave Atlanta Braves what they considered to be their all-time team. I was looking for maybe their 50 best players, including Boston and Milwaukee Brave lore. I went to the Hawks website, Atlanta Hawks that was, and they gave, I think, 5 or 10 players maybe. It was interesting. Then you went to the Atlanta. You went
had
to
go back to St. Louis days too.
You went to the Atlanta Flames, and they gave 25 guys. And the Atlanta Flames aren't even the Atlanta Flames anymore. So it was really weird. But I was going to say, great website, and really could help us with our Mount Rushmore picks, or we could put it this way. If the Chicago Bears website is as accurate as I feel the Philadelphia Eagles website is, I want to see it. I haven't.
I might have to go look at it. This was kind of triggered. Pro Football Talk on Yahoo or one of the websites had a series running of the Mount Rushmore for each football team, each NFL team. And I looked at the Bears. I didn't go through all the others, but I looked through the Bears, and their final Mount Rushmore was George Halas, obvious.
That's real obvious.
Gale Sayers.
Yeah.
Walter Payton. And Dick Butkus.
That's okay. It's 4.
That's the 4.
Yeah.
That's the 4. Some people say, "Oh, how could you leave off Mike Ditka?" Well, you know what? As a player, Mike Ditka was here for 5 years.
Yeah.
And he spent most of his career elsewhere. Granted, yes, he did win the only Super Bowl this team has ever. He did coach this team to its only Super Bowl victory. But I think Richard Dent was the one that put it the best. Mike Ditka is the reason we won a Super Bowl. Mike Ditka is also the reason why we didn't win 3 more.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree. You know, the list that you turned me on to, Jim, that you emailed me a few weeks back with the top 25 sports figures of
Chicago sports legends.
Sports legends. I was really interested because, and I'm not criticizing the guy whoever it was that made the list, because that your list is your list. But it's really interesting, the thinking that would go into that, because you made a really great comment there about Mike Ditka only being a player for the Bears for 5 years.
5-6 years, maybe.
But he has become, because of the media focus now that he actually got to be a part of, I think he's thought of as a lot. And Mike Ditka was a great player, and he did a great job of bringing the Bears to an '85 Super Bowl. So yeah, I'm not disrespecting him, but I believe on that list, the guy had him like rated, I think, number 4, or he was in the top 10 somewhere. There's no way Mike Ditka wouldn't even be. And again, no disrespect to Ditka, he wouldn't even be in the top 10 all-time players of the Chicago Bears. Okay, if you think about it. Just think, the Chicago Bears, now they just retired his number, but think of the other numbers. You got George McAfee, number 5. And for us, who never saw George McAfee play, there's the other thing about lists. We might have seen Gale Sayers and Walter Payton play. I have no idea, other than the fact that he was a great player and they chose to retire his number. How do you judge George McAfee against these other guys?
Right.
But put it this way: you've got guys like McAfee, whose number is retired.
Bulldog Turner.
Bulldog Turner, Red Grange, Bronco Nagurski. You mean to tell me that Mike Ditka is above those guys? Those guys are like legendary guys. Sid Luckman. And they're guys we didn't have a chance to see because we weren't even born.
Right.
But and that's the thing about lists. I mean, the great thing about lists, you could talk about them all day.
You can talk about them and you can argue about them all day.
Definitely, it's fun.
It's fun. That's why I thought we've got a little bit of time left. We've got about 6 minutes.
Ooh, boy.
We're moving along. But I thought we'd start with a couple of things. Maybe we'd start with our own Mount Rushmores for each team.
For each team. Okay.
Here in town.
We have to do this off the top of our heads?
Well, yeah, that's what makes it fun.
Okay.
Okay.
Go. You could.
Okay.
You want me to start?
I want you to start. Let's start with the Cubs.
Give me a team.
All right, let's start with the Cubs. I was going to say the Sting, but I didn't know what you did.
I actually, I'm starting to really get the Sting. Willie Roy.
Pato
Marhetic. Okay.
Karl-Heinz Granitza.
Okay.
And after that,
I have Franz Beckenbauer.
That's it. No, he played for
New
York.
The New York Cosmos.
Okay.
But at any rate, I'm really good at getting the top guys. I'm starting to really. But Ernie Banks is the icon. He's number one. I would say that you have P.K. Wrigley. His number would be in that. You also have, I would say, Mordecai Brown. Mordecai Three-Finger Brown. And the other guy I would probably pick would be, thinking real quick here, I would say either somebody like Charlie Root or Hack Wilson, maybe.
I would say you cannot leave the only man that's ever won, the last man to manage a Chicago Cub team to a World Series off the list. You can't leave the peerless leader, Frank Chance, off that list. You're right, Frank Chance. And actually, at that point in time, the Cubs were probably what you would consider the Cubs the way we would have maybe considered the Yankees years later. They were like a dynastic type of team. So, yeah, I agree. I would say you'd have to, you could go. It's hard when you think about this. Ernie Banks, obviously. I would think Charlie Grimm, because of he managed the team. He managed the team dependence.
Okay. Go ahead. You're on the clock, buddy. We got that air going here.
Billy Williams.
Okay.
Billy Williams.
Okay. And who else?
Gabby Hartnett.
Ooh, well, that's a great pick, Gabby Hartnett.
Yeah?
I like that. That's a good one.
That's an interesting.
Okay, that is really good.
That's a list we can argue about. Let's move to the South Side.
The South Side. That's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
That's a real tough one. I'll take the old Roman, Charles Comiskey, because he was one of the first.
I would take
that. He's a pioneer.
I would take that.
I'm going to put Louis Aparicio because he's probably the best modern day player that they've had. I would think most outstanding modern day player. Luke Appling, great player. I mean, there's a guy you couldn't strike out. And the other one I'm going to say, and I don't have a real good feel for him in terms of knowing exactly what he did, but I know that he's lionized. Let's see. I'd say a toss-up between Ted Lyons and Frank Thomas.
Oh, lionized. Ted
Lyons.
Nicely.
But I'll take. I'll just say Ted Lyons just for the sake of talk.
All right. The old Roman.
Okay.
Luke Appling.
Okay.
Frank Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorites as a kid, Nelson Fox.
Nelson Fox, great player. Yeah. Excellent player.
Okay.
All right, where are we at now?
All right.
We're getting close to the end there.
We're getting close. We got 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Well,
Blackhawks.
The Blackhawks. That's pretty easy for me because I have, the Blackhawks were a horrid team probably up until the 50s. They had a couple of Stanley Cups.
Yeah, back in the 30s.
Back in the 30s, but they stunk most of the time. So
you realize that the most valuable player in the National Hockey League in 1953 was the Blackhawks goaltender, and they only won 12 games that year.
Wow.
Al Rollins.
Al Rollins, yeah. I know. I've heard that name. I'll give you Bobby Hull tops the list.
Bobby
Stan
Hall,
Mikita,
Stan
Glenn
Mikita.
Hall, and I will take. Let's see, who's the other guy I want? I don't know. I'll go. I think we should maybe guys who are currently playing. Let's not count them. So I won't go there. I'll go with I don't know, Bill Mosienko.
Boy,
Yeah.
jeez, the pony line.
Yeah.
Part of the pony line.
Yeah.
Bobby Hull,
Okay.
Stan Mikita,
Mm-hmm.
Tony O.
Oh, that's right, Tony O.
And I had a name, and it just popped
Glenn
up.
Hall.
No. We've got one goaltender, Dennis Savard.
That's it.
Savoir-faire.
Those are good picks.
Yeah.
A few years ago, and I wanted to amaze and stump my friends. I said, I said, okay, if you took the what I would consider the five major sports teams, Cubs, Sox, Bears, Bulls, and Blackhawks, who is the least successful record-wise of all of those? And it's the Blackhawks, because they were, the Sox, the Cubs, obviously the Bulls have been strong through almost their entire history, and the Bears were a dominant team at one time.
Mm-hmm.
But the Blackhawks were the ones who were the most pitiful for the longest period of time. So they have the worst overall record of all of those teams.
All right, I'm watching the clock.
All
It's
right.
starting to come up to the top. I want to wrap this up with one quick item here. We want to wish Anthony Miraz from the Ridgewood basketball team good luck in the tournaments. He's been playing in some AAU tournaments. And that is going to wrap it up for us for this edition. Thanks to John DeVita for spinning the dials and leaving the door unlocked and the keys in the ignition.
You didn't leave the ice box open though, John. I'm disappointed.
Okay,
the refrigerator was not open.
All right, thanks for listening. We'll see you again next time.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Lyon and Rich Massaro. This program was directed by John DeVita, edited by Stephen Lehman, and our audio engineer was James Rohde. This program was pre-recorded on Thursday, July the 25th, the year 2013. Thanks for listening.